All right. So welcome everyone to the Marine Mammals Work Group winter meeting on this Wednesday, February 19th. We were just kind of sharing what signs of spring we've been seeing around lately. I think, what was it? Anna shared that last week doing some surveys. It was extremely cold, doing some harbor porpoise surveys. So glad the cold snap has kind of subsided for a bit. Flowers are popping up, all the good things. We're really excited to have you all today. We have a full agenda, which I'll review, and then we'll transition into announcements and highlight some upcoming opportunities and events. All right, so we're going to kick off today, spend the next 5 minutes or so over reviewing welcome and announcements. Then we have a breakout room activity. We're doing things a little bit differently. Our prompt is to focus on our key messages in the orca's vital sign. So we'll pop in a link into the chat and just hope people within your breakout room will have a discussion around, what's there, what resonates still, is there anything missing? I'll also provide a little update to that, and then we'll return as a group and for a couple additional minutes discuss it overall and talk about the next steps in the process to have those vital sign key messages updated by the end of March. And then we have an update from Katrina on the Monitoring to Accelerate Recovery opportunity. That'll just be a quick update, bringing that information to the group. And then we'll get into our presentations and discussion items. So Cindy will be presenting on long-term generational site fidelity of harbor porpoises in the Salish Sea. Jess will be presenting on some recent legislation, vessels using scrubber systems in Canadian waters and Washington state low sulfur fuels legislation. We have some links to materials in our meeting folder there that you can look at there, and I'll circulate after the meeting as well. We'll take a brief break, just recognizing 2 hours looking at your screen is a while. Then we'll return with a discussion with Jeff Rice, talking about Encyclopedia of Puget Sound updates, and end the day with a presentation from Hendrik focusing on killer whale health metrics. All right. So transitioning into announcements, and Dawn and Scott were just talking about this. So these are just upcoming meetings and events that we've been circulating in the listserv. So the International Symposium on Orcas is currently happening, and it sounds like Scott and Dawn have been attending some of those virtual sessions. It's being held in Spain, so unfortunately, it doesn't seem like either of you are there in person. There's also some upcoming meetings and events we wanted to highlight: the Acoustical Society of America. And then internally to the PSEMP community, there's this ongoing series, Coffee with PSEMP. Registration is required, and the next meeting is April 8th. I circulated those links in the listserv and will do so again. And then we also always like to highlight the Salish Sea Science Roundtable ongoing meetings. They meet on the first Tuesday of each month. And they just had a presentation from Rob Williams and Andy James about, I can circulate that link to that presentation, but about orcas and kind of the toxicity, contamination concerns and that intersection. So I'll definitely circulate that presentation for those who might be interested. Any other announcements or upcoming meetings, events rather, that folks don't see here but would like to highlight? Feel free to unmute or use the chat and I can.
I'll pop something in the chat. There's a transboundary vessels workshop coming up in March, and I just need to find the link and I will pop the information in the chat. And that's hosted by Canada, and Julie Watson and Todd Haas will be participating and I'll be moderating. So I'll put the information in the chat.
Perfect. Thanks, Tara. All right. And then moving on to announcements, we just wanted to highlight here. There are some funding opportunities, new funding opportunities that have been announced. The Puget Sound Scientific Research, so the request for information has been released. And there's a webinar coming up March 18th from 10 to 11, registration required. And again, I'll circulate those links for those of you who are interested in learning more. There's also an announcement that has been circulated in the listserv about a communication consultant and support resource through PSEMP. So essentially, there's a request form that you can fill out if you're interested in learning more or kind of tapping into this resource. There's more information about what exactly that resource can be used for, but it's really great, like a great opportunity for folks. So wanted to highlight that here, and we'll circulate that information continually in the listserv email. And then I won't spend too much time talking about the monitoring to accelerate recovery because we have Katrina kind of digging in a little bit deeper just to highlight this opportunity in a few minutes here. But we'll continue to circulate any grant opportunities that could provide a good opportunity for collaboration amongst work group members. And I'll pause here again and just ask if there's any other announcements, whether that's funding or events that you've just thought of now. We can take a pause here before we transition to our breakout room activity. Oh, and thanks, Scott, for just putting in that recording of the 2024 Marine Mammal Symposium on YouTube.
There were also recordings made at the Ways of the Whale workshop, which I'm not sure if those are online, but that might be another thing to look for and just link back into this section.
Great. Katrina?
Yeah. Hi, Nicole, and hi, all. I maybe just want to add a little emphasis on the communications consultant. So this is like a pilot effort that we're trying within the PSEMP community after hearing that like folks have been struggling to create like communication products or like could utilize support with like even just copy editing like your own reports and reviews that you're published and publications that you're looking to do. So just because it may not have, I guess, like a collaborative project that PSEMP is like quote unquote working on, which I sort of say loosely because PSEMP is fairly broad in definition and in membership. And so if it's really a project that you have that you are interested in having some kind of communication support, this is what that consultant's for. It's to help provide a little bit of more of that technical capacity and support. And then, of course, wanting to highlight that Jeff Rice and what they do at Puget Sound Institute, like if you have a story to help tell, they're like our great go-to partners to help collaborate and help tell that story. And they have all the right outlets to help do that. So just a reminder, especially as I know we're facing a lot of different transitions and folks are wanting to get more into storytelling, that there's multiple different resources now available to help support communication, both at a technical copy editing level to developing communication products to helping you all tell the stories that you're seeing in your monitoring community. So just a quick flag there. And if folks have any questions about it, happy to be a resource there.
Thanks for elaborating on that, Katrina. All right. Oh, and Cindy in the chat just noted that the workshop recording's not quite publicly available yet, but will be soon, hopefully. All right, we want to stay on track for our morning half of our agenda. So I think with that, we're gonna go into about 3 to 4 person breakout groups. And again, the focus of these breakout rooms is to talk through the orca's vital sign with really the lens of what is really important and should be moved forward into our update. Is there anything missing? And is there anything that is more supportive than speaking directly to our indicators? And then we'll come together as a full group and kind of talk about it a bit more. As a follow-up, I'll be sending out the draft vital signs that have been updated with any additional feedback from today and from our Southern Resident Killer Whale and Biggs Killer Whale committees that have already provided some input on the vital signs for additional feedback for the next like week and a half. So I'll reiterate those next steps when we come back, but we're going to get into small groups. I'll drop the link into our chat for those vital signs. So you have some time with them to open them and look, and then Candace is putting us into breakout rooms. So the link went to the current orca's vital signs on the website.
Okay, not an updated version.
Not an updated version.
Okay.
But I do have I'm gonna share kind of a link right now. We wanted folks who hadn't had the opportunity to kind of compare and think through, reflect on the 2023 version. Maybe they would see things that the committees who have had a chance to provide input already might not have identified. So we did link it to the vital sign key messages that are currently live on the PSEMP website. However, we are working through like the incorporation of feedback that we got from committees, the Southern Resident Killer Whale and Biggs Killer Whale, and we're starting to put it in the format that's going to be required. So there's a big word limitation requirement that is 50 words max, 6 bullets total. And if you go to that link, that Google Doc link I just put into the chat, you'll kind of see it. A lot of things are just pulling it over and kind of making it more succinct. And then there are also potential options to flag additional bullets that could be considered additional information, but aren't necessarily directly speaking to our indicators. So I think at least in the group I was in, there was some good discussion, and I want to take the next 5 minutes just to hear out of what groups kind of talked through. And if there's any volunteers to do that, I would love to just like use this as a brain dump, recognizing we're going to have more time to get individual feedback through this shared document where you can track changes, provide comments, but really just use the next 5 minutes to throw your thoughts out there. Go ahead, Noah Fisheries.
Hi, yeah,
Laura.
this is Laura Cohen. I think our group talked a lot about, I mean, now I hear that you have a word limit, I'm a little more cautious, but we talked a lot about adding more about what the public can do, including maybe some on the vessel regulations to educate voters more on those, but also just other things the public can do to help recover some of the resident killer whales. And we also talked about having more like imagery, like there's definitely the one picture of the orca on the actual website, but having more like impactful imagery. Someone brought up like some of the drone photos and body photogrammetry, and how that kind of shows how just how
The
bad
story
things can be.
visually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura. Go ahead, Tara.
Yeah, just of note, and I'm not advocating necessarily to add anything, but just something to consider, when the task force did meet, they came up with 5 goals, and the last one in the final report was around population growth, and of humans, population density in our communities. And that has a lot to do with land use decisions and, directly linked to contaminants and loss of habitat for salmon. So I don't know if it's appropriate to add something somewhere on that, but that was definitely one of the goals of the task force. So just something to consider, Nicole. There's been efforts that have been coming out of that, the net ecological gain effort. There's a bill for passenger ferries now. That was part of the population growth discussion.
Okay. Others we haven't heard from that want to share?
I guess I just noted, this is Fred Bellman, that the presence of the whales, it talks to their decline in spring to fall, or their, and whereas there seems to be an uptick in their presence during the fall to winter.
Great. Yeah, and I think I can follow up with you about that just to make sure we're telling the right story.
I was also just thinking you talk about the diet for the southern residents. I think this is for the southern residents, but you're also saying conversely, the big orcas use the Salish Sea dramatically increase. You might want to say why they do, because there's lots of seals and porpoises that are there to eat. So might be a good juxtaposition. And also we need to keep the seals and porpoises here so that they have something to eat.
Yeah, well, we discussed that in terms of trying to explain how the toxicity impact on transients is, seems to be negligible compared to that of residents, and being fat and happy was the conclusion there, and that their increased presence of the residents in the fall to winter, I think, is very much correlated to the increase of, fall runs of chum and coho, which are, bumper crops in the Duwamish. The Muckleshoot are doubling their fishing fleet as a result. So again, it's just sort of reinforcing it's the prey stupid.
Yeah.
Great. And feel free to use chat as well. But to stay kind of on our agenda, I am going to hand it off to Cindy soon to kick off our presentations. But wanted to just end this really recognizing this is a brief discussion and there's more opportunity for feedback. We're going to be sharing that Google document link with the full work group and open it up to optional feedback, comments, and then the coordinators will work to revise and integrate. The first draft has to be submitted to PSP by the end of next week, but March is going to be a collaborative, iterative process to finalize those. So we'll be communicating through our listserv. I did a listserv check kind of, I think, last week. So if you're not receiving those listserv emails, just let me know in the chat. Would be easy for those of you who are in attendance today. But that's how we'll be communicating about this. And I just realized I'm actually handing it off to Katrina, not Cindy, to give us a really brief overview about MAR. Okay, so if you have any questions, please use the chat. We can continue to use chat as a resource for discussion in this meeting. All right, Katrina. Are you with us?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I'm trying to like manage multiple tabs right now. Okay, let me screen share with y'all. So I just put a link into the chat that should link folks to the original announcement for monitoring to accelerate recovery. And I want to acknowledge that if you have questions for me, I can only do like light touches of answering. But if you have if it's a more complex question, please do submit your question during the current open Q&A period, as you'll get a more detailed response. It's just to help us avoid conflicts of interest with that. So with that said, like Nicole noted, there's three different funding opportunities right now through the Puget Sound partnerships in terms of science. There's one that's on salmon science. There's another on Puget Sound scientific research, which is related to the science panel's work plan. And then we have monitoring to accelerate recovery. You may see our acronyms MAR. And this is really the funding opportunity that we've aimed towards developing out the vital signs and to help support the wider PSEMP and monitoring community initiatives. And so through monitoring to accelerate recovery, this is, I think, our third or fourth cycle that we're gearing up for. It's every biennium. So we're asking for project submissions that would, in theory, start in the next biennium. So anytime after July 1st of 2025, going and finishing up by June 30th of 2027. And these projects, again, sort of have two category needs that we are looking for. First is Category 1 projects, which relate specifically in the development of vital sign indicators and other measures used by the Puget Sound Partnership. And then there's Category 2 projects, which is a much broader category that's really focused on assessing and synthesizing and disseminating monitoring information that can inform decision-making to support a thriving Puget Sound. So this is meant to be very broad. You must, if you're interested in submitting a proposal, you must submit pick a category and make it explicit within the proposal process. I'm just going to quickly sort of note in a little bit more detail about what's in each of one of these categories. This is the exact same slides that we used for the webinar. So if you want to look more into these slides, please look into the webinar link, which I will post after I'm done screen sharing. But so just a little bit of a recap. Category 1 projects, again, meant to be supporting the development of new vital sign indicators. There is a very explicit list of what indicators we're looking to support and what kind of products are going to be included with the development of this. So if this is a topic that you are interested in, and there is one related to orcas, the orcas vital sign, please look at Appendix A for more information about what are the products and what other indicator information there is. And again, vital signs are meant to help capture the status and trends of indicators. And I mentioned product types. There's 4 different product types that could be, including indicator scoping summary reports, an indicator status and trends and reporting plan. So you can think of CLAPS as another sort of related kind of product possible to this. There is a template that the partnership provides if we're not using federal funding. And then there is first time evaluation and indicator reports, which there's also another template in that full solicitation document. And then new this year is a Chinook salmon recovery report, which is helping to support out the new salmon habitat indicators. So again, encourage folks to set more time with the solicitation and dig deeper into Appendix A if this is a category for you. Category 2 is, again, very broad. It's like this is where we don't have a defined list of priority needs. We're looking to the wider community to have you tell us what is the challenge that you're trying to address, what is the process and methodology that you're trying to address it with, and again, following all the aspects that's related in the solicitation. Again, some examples of product types could include synthesis, effectiveness assessments, modeling, meta-analysis, events that foster collaboration, surveys or other engagements, products and tools development. And by no means this is a comprehensive list. It's just a way to help spark some ideas. So I'm thinking I'm gonna wrap this up. I was like, please look into the solicitation in greater details. And I see a couple, there might be some chats and there might be a hand up. I'm just acknowledging and trying to manage expectations. I may not be able to answer all questions, but if I can do a quick clarifying, I can do that on the spot. So I will stop sharing and I owe you all a couple of links in this chat. But Francis, is this a quick question that I can help clarify?
It is a quick question. It's probably the elephant in the room here. How much of the funding for this is coming from federal funds?
Great question. In the past, we've used like almost truly half and half is our federal funds versus state funds. That was at the request from our previous bienniums. We hope it's going to continue to be a blended funds, but we don't know. So state funds, we don't know what our state, as a state agency, we do not know what our official budget is until the legislators at our state level make that decision. And so we're waiting for that to happen in spring 2025. And then we're looking for more guidance from EPA, who is our federal funders for the federal funding. So more to come, but this is sort of in the, if we're keeping business as usual, which we have requested it to make that possible, it should be 50-50.
Thanks, Katrina, for providing that update. Really appreciate it. And we'll appreciate those links, which will circulate in the meeting notes as well. All right. I'm going to hand it off to Cindy.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me, hopefully this will work. Technology.
We see your
Everybody can see that?
slides.
Yay, okay. So I'm gonna go.
Oh, there it goes. Okay, looks great.
Okay. I'm gonna go a little bit quickly here because I unfortunately have a conflicting meeting at 2 that I need to jump off for. I hope to be able to come back, but I might not be able to. So if you have any questions that I can't get to, you can email me afterwards. So I'm going to be talking about long-term and generational site fidelity of harbor porpoises in the Salish Sea from the long-term work that I've been doing as the research director and founder of Pacific Mammal Research here in Anacortes, Washington. So just a little bit about us if you're not familiar. We're a land-based study on Burroughs Pass. If you've been up to Washington Park, that's our study area off Fidalgo Island. We began in 2014. And basically we go out and do photo ID and behavioral observations of harbor porpoises and harbor seals in this area. So this is kind of the conglomeration of the last basically 11 years of work that we've been doing out there. We did do a first study that showed some site fidelity in over 3 years, but we wanted to update that paper, and that's what this is. So the big story, we already know, but just reemphasizing that photo ID can be done on harbor porpoises, which was not thought to be able to be done back in the day. So we've been out there for a long time. We generally see porpoises. It's you rarely get skunked if you go out to that location. So you know, about 85% of the time we were observing porpoises during our observations. We do photo ID with these guys. So we have 195 individually identified, and these are based on pigmentation patterns that are unique on the sides of the animal, the scars and lesions that they unfortunately get, but fortunate for us for ID purposes. And then we also look at dorsal fin shape. And these are interesting because we can use them to assist us in confirming IDs, but we can also use them to differentiate individuals, even if we can't do the ID, because the shapes are different. We know how many animals were in the past, because sometimes, as you all know, harbor porpoises can be very tricky in determining how many animals are there in the group because they don't like to surface all at the same time. So we use multiple markers to be able to identify the individuals. So we did some background too about just the group size and how they use the pass. We do find in summer in our location, porpoises are consistently less around during the summertime. We do still see them, but you can see that the percentage of observation with sightings and the percentage of time we actually observe porpoises while we're out there is much lower. And as is SPUE is sightings per unit effort. So correcting for effort, we still see them much less. And actually we're out there more in the summer because it's nicer out. And then the other interesting thing I want to show you there is that the percentage of time observing porpoises is less in winter as well. And that we'll come back to that in a little bit. But so summer, they go somewhere else in summer, and we're still not sure exactly where that is. In relation to group size, so group size is around 2.5, so under 3 at the median of 2. And this is a little bit larger than other group sizes, but still within the mean range for porpoise group sizes worldwide. They are significantly more likely to travel in winter, and that was a very interesting thing we learned, and makes sense, as I'll talk about in a little bit. And we're more likely to see them foraging in spring and fall. So there are seasonal differences in the behaviors that they're doing while they're coming to the pass. And social interactions, we didn't see any kind of difference. Then we also looked at tide, because tide can be a very important indicator of when and where porpoises are. And we found that they're more likely to be traveling in ebb or slack low. They really just don't like ebb. They're just like, we're not going to stay here. I'm going to go straight through. And they're more likely to be foraging or socializing in every other tidal state besides ebb. So they really do one thing during ebb, and that is travel through the area. And so in winter, when it's an ebb tide and it's winter, they're really just like, let's just travel through. And again, that'll come, we'll come back to that with the photo ID part. It makes sense. So to the photo ID, this is the most exciting part. We're one of the only ones in the world that are doing this kind of long-term research on harbor porpoises. And so it's been really exciting to see what we've documented over the last 11 years. So the majority of them we do see more than once. At least 65 of the 164 non-calf individuals, right? We took out the calves because they're oftentimes not able to be ID'd past weaning. So 65 of the 164 we've cited in at least 2 different years. So we have sightings ranging from 1 to 125 sightings. So we have some very resident individuals here that really use Burroughs Pass a lot. So we've documented up to 11 years of year-round site fidelity. So you can see the photo to the left there has 6 different animals. The top 3 are kind of our biggest 3 females that we've seen consistently for up to 11 years. Piano was seen in 2014 with a calf. So we do know she was an adult then. So she's been around since then, and the other one's been around since 2018. And then the bottom 3 are actually calves that are from the first one, PHA, is from Pointer, and then PIC and PIZ are from Piano, PI, the top female. So these are the Pharaoh, the PHA is a male, PIC Piccolo is a female, and PIZ Pizzicato is unknown sex. But we do know that there are male and female calves that do remain here. So there is a degree of natal philopatry that we've observed. And then I'll talk about this in a second, but it was unknown whether calves, females would give birth to calves yearly or bi-yearly here in the Salish Sea on the Pacific. It was kind of thought that Atlantic was yearly and Pacific was bi-yearly, but we have documented that they do have calves consecutively here, at least in the animals in Burroughs Pass. So I'm going to highlight again those top 3 females that we see a lot of. We have documentation of a lot of their calves. So this is Pointer. She is our poster child. She loves to be here, and she loves photos, and she loves being on video, and she's very easily identifiable. So we've seen her for at least 7 years of site fidelity, and we actually did see her earlier this year. So she's bumped up to 8 years now. And what I'm highlighting here, these are females on the left, the moms, and then how many calves they've had. And then gray means that the females were seen that year, and then the letters in there indicate either a named calf or an unknown calf, which is UN. But you can see Pointer did at least have one time where she was seen with 2 different calves in 2 different in consecutive years. And what we estimate is that she was at least 3 or 4, basically at least 3 when we first saw her in 2018. She was an adult. So that means she is at least 10 years old and had a calf in 2024. Moving on, this is Raindrop. This is, she's also very similar to Pointer in that we've seen her since, so with 7 years of site fidelity, I don't think we've seen her yet this year. But again, she's at least 10 years old with a calf in 2024. And you can see she's been really good at having calves. She's had 3 in a row the last 3 years. The two little asterisks in that are in 2021 there indicate that the female was seen with the previous year's calf and not a new calf that year. So indication some little bit longer than weaning associations between mom and calf. And then Piano, this is our one we've seen for the longest time. We've seen her for 11 years. She had a calf when we first saw her in 2014. So we do know that she is definitely was at least 3 at that time. So she is at the very least 14 years old and had a calf in 2023 and 2024. And then also earlier, she had consecutive calves as well. So if we look at resightings of when do we see these animals seasonally, we do see these are a subset of the animals porpoises that we've seen at least 10 or more times to get an indication of how often they're here between seasons. And we did see that sightings are more common resightings are more common in spring and fall, and they're lower in winter. And we know why they're lower in summer, because they're just not here as much. Like that's just the basis for any porpoise that's around here. But why were they lower in winter? Well, likely that goes back to the fact that they are traveling in winter, really all they want to do. And the conditions for getting photos are just not as great with the lighting and the weather and whatnot. And we can't be out as much oftentimes, but particularly traveling, because when they're traveling, they pop up once or twice in the past and then they're gone, fast traveling through. So we just can't get good photos under those conditions. So it's likely that what we're showing here, they're likely here during the winter. We just aren't able to document them because of that. But summer, they're gone. The exciting thing about one of the exciting things about harbor porpoises, I mean, there's many, but the outwardly exciting thing to do is mating. So they will leap. If you don't know, you can look it up. It's whole nother talk, but they leap out of the water oftentimes with the male coming up on the left-hand side of the female 100% of the time. And so we've documented mating attempts all year in every season, sometimes in every season within a given year, and in every month. So they do it all the time, probably because they have to practice, because it's difficult. Aerial mating. The other exciting thing that we've documented was 3 generations of harbor porpoises. Piano had her calf Piccolo in 2017, and then in 2023, they were both, Piccolo was sighted with the calf as well as Piano. So grandmother and daughter both had calves in the same year and were sighted in the area. So pretty exciting to have 3 generations that we know of a family line with these guys. So back on the calf site fidelity. So this is, again, Piccolo is one of Piano's calves, and you can get the name. We went with kind of a music theme. 10 sightings over 8 years. We have Pizzicato, which is 31 sightings over 5 years. And then Pharaoh, who was the male son of Pointer, 46 sightings over 5 years. So these calves are remaining here and consistently here, or at least some of these guys. The other kind of side note thing that Pharaoh did, Pharaoh is a male, Pointer is his mom. That is a mating attempt picture. That is Pharaoh trying to mate with his mother. So we don't know how often this happens or if this is just a rarity. But the mating behavior is interesting because it's unclear whether anybody really knows who's going after who. Sometimes it's a very sudden kind of attack where I don't even know if the female knows who's coming after her or if he knows who he's going to. Who knows? But anyway, it was documented that it happened, which we thought was an interesting side note. So in the end here, and it looks like I should have some time for some questions. We've shown that there are up to 11 years of site fidelity and NATO phylopatry that are evident here. This has also been shown with eDNA studies in Alaska, where the stock structure that they have right now with NOAA is likely should be looked at again because there are genetically distinct and demographically independent units that are within that stock boundary that are all genetically distinct. So it looks like there's smaller ranges that these animals have, and they stay in a certain area and don't really mix. And I think that's probably what we'll find once we get more work done here in the COC. But they also showed natal phylopatry and limited gene flow between those populations within that larger larger NOAA stock. We do know that females can reproduce yearly here. This was suggested in the stranding data by Stephanie Norman and et al. They documented that it looked like physiologically they could based on some of the stuff they saw, but they couldn't say for sure. But we can say for sure at least some of these individuals can reproduce every year. And I think one of the coolest things was that, we have females that can have calves as old as 14. The age range that we have for harbor purposes is like between 8 and 24 years old, which means we really just don't know how old they are. But this kind of indicates, or at least suggests, that the lifespan of 8 to 10 as being average may not be appropriate for otherwise relatively healthy populations. If we have animals that are 10 and 14 years old. And this has been documented in other locations in the Netherlands and Denmark, where they have 12 and 14-year-old females that are having calves. So just a couple caveats. Documentation of the social behavior that we analyzed is likely largely underrepresented, simply because the main social thing that we're looking at is mating, because it's very splashy when they do it above the water, but we don't catch all of those. And there's lots of mating attempts, I'm sure, that happen that are underwater as well. They do both. So the visibility of what looks like to be social interactions for harbor purposes is likely vastly underrepresented, just because we don't exactly know what to look for, and they do it a lot underwater. We've also done some recent drone work where we've seen, like, to us, it just looks like they're surfacing. Normally, there's no other external, what's going on. But the drone showed that there was an underwater mating attempt that occurred. So we're definitely underrepresenting how much social interactions are happening here. Wanted to highlight too that the effects of tide at different locations, it looks to be very site specific, even on small scales. So for us, they don't like ebb tide at Burroughs Pass, but they may not be true over in Deception Pass or up in San Juan Islands. In other locations, they've seen very close together locations within their study area showing vastly different usages of what they're, the behaviors that they're doing at different tides. So at one point they like flood in that location, but they like ebb over here. So very important to look at these animals in that small spatial and time scale. And then again, there was some indication of some other calf associations after weaning, where those couple females did have, were photographed with the calf from the previous year. So it was like November of the following year, which means it's been over a year since they gave birth. And most of the time weaning is supposed to be less than a year, oftentimes, 9-ish months. So we did see them. They were close together too. It wasn't just that they were in the same group. They were almost, close to, a kind of echelon position, and next to each other. So it does seem that there's maybe some interactions there, but none that we documented long-term after that. So lastly, photo ID works for harbor purposes. And to our knowledge, there's only one other study that we know of that has this kind of long-term data, and that's in the Netherlands. They haven't published anything yet, unfortunately, but I do mention that in the paper, that there was personal communications from them about the data that they have. And just that this is harder with harbor porpoises, and so what we're presenting likely vastly underrepresents the true level of site fidelity these animals have to this area. And there's going to be some individual variation in that. Some are not going to be here, and some are going to hang out a lot. But it does indicate that we have a local population of harbor porpoises that use this area, and this could be a biologically important area for them. So with that, I didn't actually mean to do that, but there's that, and I will put in the chat, I had it ready to go. Here we go. The paper was just published and is open access. So I put the link in the chat, so you're welcome to look at it. And I have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions if anybody has it. Otherwise, you feel free to email me afterwards as well. But we like to promote harbor porpoises and the awesomeness that they are.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, Cindy has to jump off in 4 minutes, but we should have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Hi, Cindy. Have any of your catalog animals been photographed in other places in Puget Sound or the COC, and that information got back to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we asked people to send photos, and we do have photos that are being sent from different locations, and with different research groups. We work with Anna up in BC as well, trying to connect these photographs. The only I have one that was in I think it was up by Cyprus, like not too far away, but more in the San Juan Islands. But the biggest one that we just got was Deception Pass. So we have someone that was out on a whale watching boat or Deception Pass tours or something, and one of our followers was like, "Hey, do you know this animal?" And it was raindrop, actually. So we do know they at least go that far. But the biggest issue is we just don't have enough good photographs of these animals because they're hard to get pictures of, and we just need more people out there with really big lenses.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Cindy, quick question, just thinking about conservation, vaquita, etc. The animals that you saw that had consecutive calves, do you have any information if those calves did they survive, or did you see times where there was a consecutive calf born, but you didn't see the previous year's calf present?
So let me go back and look at so
Or we can chat later.
yeah, no, there's definitely times that we've like, I mean, like the 3 calves that we show site fidelity, we do know that they have stayed. But many of the calves we can't identify after before they leave because we just don't get enough good photos, or they don't have marks or whatever. So that's still kind of a question. I'm just trying to look and see. There was, yeah, most of theirs we didn't.
I guess the other way around of thinking about that is if you ever saw that they had lost a calf and then had a consecutive calf, like in the following year.
Oh, yeah. Well, the problem is we don't, it's really hard to determine if they lost the calf or we just didn't see, because a lot of times we don't see them for a while. And so
Yeah, no.
Did it get weaned or lost? Yeah. So we don't have any indication that we know that one was lost, that year and then had a new calf the next year.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, no, I get the complexities.
Yeah, I know you do.
Totally. Thanks, Cindy. Great presentation.
Yep. Thanks. Okay, my other meeting is yelling at me to get in there, so I will try to hop back on if I can, but otherwise, thank you so much for listening to Harbor Porpoises, and reach out with any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much, Cindy. All right. So I'm going to hand it off to Jess Newley, who will be presenting about the potential restrictions on scrubber discharge from vessels in Canadian waters and some recent legislation to reduce environmental impacts associated with vessels.
Thank you, Nicole. And yes, thank you everybody for having me join here today. I am subbing for my coworker Level Pratt, and we'll be giving you a little update and background info on vessels using scrubber systems in U.S. Canadian waters and Washington State low sulfur fuels legislation. And Level is much more practiced at using these big words, so but I'm going to try my best. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation. Friends of the San Juan's mission is to bring people and nature together to protect the San Juan Islands and the Salish Sea through education, science, policy, and law. And we're going to start with this view of the entire Salish Sea ecosystem, where we can see the interconnectedness of this multi-nation region. All of these waters are unceded. And we all know the importance of this biological rich inland sea. For those of you who have read The State of the Salish Sea, you know the local population growth and urbanization are primary threats to this ecosystem. Population growth is also a primary driver in the growth of vessel traffic. As the population grows, so will the demand for global freight. Now we're going to zoom into the central Salish Sea region. These are the vessel traffic lanes that are for the large commercial ships that share the Salish Sea, along with marine mammals and all forms of aquatic and nearshore life, including all of us who call this place home. Vessel traffic is cooperatively managed by the U.S. and Canadian Coast Guard's Vessel Traffic Services. The entire Strait of Juan de Fuca, highlighted there in the green, on both sides of the border is managed by the US, and the vessel traffic in Harrow Strait and Turnpoint and Boundary Pass and Lower Georgia Strait on both sides of the border is managed by Canada. Okay, this infographic has a lot of information, but it's good information, and thanks to Nicole for sending out these slides afterwards if anyone needs a closer look, along with the links too. So the North American Emission Control Area was designated under a global treaty enacted by the International Maritime Organization, better known as the IMO. And this requires the use of fuel with a maximum 0.1% sulfur content for ships operating within 200 nautical miles of North American shores. Exhaust gas cleaning systems, better known as scrubbers, are accepted as an alternative means to meet the 0.1% low sulfur fuel requirement by the IMO in the US and Canada. Scrubbers enable ships to burn less expensive and more polluting heavy fuel oil instead of the maximum 0.1% low sulfur fuels. Scrubbers transfer some of the pollution that would go into the air to the water. Scrubber discharges are highly toxic, significantly hotter, and up to 100,000 times more acidic than the surrounding waters. Pollutants include heavy metals, polycyclic, aromatic hydrocarbons, known as PAHs, nitrates, and nitrites, sulfates, and particulate matter. The presence of heavy metals and PAHs is especially concerning given their ability to persist in marine environments, accumulate within marine species, and disrupt biological processes. Ships that use heavy fuel oil with scrubbers also produce significantly more air pollution than ships using low sulfur fuels, emitting 70% more particulate matter, up to 4.5 times more black carbon, and considerably more PAHs into the atmosphere compared to ships running on low sulfur fuel. Black carbon pollution is accelerating the Arctic meltdown and global warming. All right, and on this infographic, if you can see this cute little orange guys there. So these are the copepods. Copepods are the tiny but significant animal planktons that are the foundation of the marine food web. A recent study found that even at extremely low concentrations, just 0.001%, scrubber discharges severely affect the larval development and reproductive success of copepods. The study shows that scrubber discharges could have severe impacts on the copepod population, which in return could impact the entire food web. To the human health risks, humans are exposed to the toxic pollution and scrubber discharges from eating contaminated seafood, skin contact, and inhalation of air pollutants while recreating on or near the water. Marine ecosystem disruption from scrubber discharges raises significant health and environmental concerns for indigenous and subsistence fishing communities. Toxic algal blooms linked to nutrient overload from scrubber-related nitrate and nitrite releases can devastate marine populations, threatening the resilience of communities that rely on seafood. Elevated PAHs and heavy metal loads in marine organisms also put seafood-dependent communities at higher risk of health complications. All right, going into some of the technology side of things, what you see here are two types of scrubbers, the open loop scrubbers shown on the left. They use vast quantities of seawater to remove contaminants from the ship's exhaust and then discharge the contaminated wash water overboard. On the right, the closed loop scrubbers use either fresh or seawater that's treated with alkaline chemicals and recirculated through the ship's exhaust. Scrubber discharges can still occur with closed systems. There are also hybrid scrubber systems that can toggle between open and closed modes. The types of scrubbers, most scrubbers, 80.58% are open, and whenever the engines are running, they are continuously discharging the highly acidic sulfur oxides and other toxic contaminants that are scrubbed from the ship's exhaust. Unless scrubber use or fuel restrictions are in place, scrubber discharges occur close to the shorelines at ports and anchorages and through protected areas. Only 1.1% of scrubbers are closed, and these scrubbers, these are the scrubbers that recirculate the chemically treated scrubber wash water. The rest of the scrubbers are hybrid systems that can operate in either open or closed modes. From 2014 to 2024, there was a 4,607% increase in the number of ships that installed scrubbers in order to burn less expensive and more polluting heavy fuel oil. Scrubber discharges on Canada's Pacific coast. Canada, like the US, allows ships to burn the less expensive and more polluting heavy oil fuel oil along with scrubbers in lieu of low sulfur fuels. We have better data on scrubber discharges in Canada than we do for the US. The Canadian government found that on the Canada's Pacific coast, which includes the multi-nation Salish Sea, scrubber discharges totaled 88.3 million tons, which is over 97.3 million US tons in 2022, nearly double the amount that was discharged in 2019. The chart on this slide has the details on those discharges, and again, will be sent out for a closer look. Scrubber discharges in the southern resident killer whale critical habitat. This same Canadian government study also found in 2022 that there were over 26 million tons or 28.66 million US tons of scrubber discharges in the southern resident killer whales critical habitat in the multinational Salish Sea. Port of Vancouver scrubber regulations. The Port of Vancouver is Canada's largest port with 29 major terminals. The port extends from Roberts Bank on the US-Canadian border up to and including the Fraser River and Burrard Inlet. Scrubber discharges have been prohibited at the Port of Vancouver while ships are at berth or at anchor within the port's jurisdiction since March 1st, 2022. The Port of Vancouver has plans for 2 additional phases of restrictions on scrubbers to prohibit scrubber discharges in all waters within the port's jurisdiction and require the use of low sulfur or alternative fuels, effectively prohibiting the use of scrubber systems from the betterment of water and air quality. And that quote was from the Port of Vancouver Sustainability Report, which is the link on the slide there. So there's in current legislation right now, the scrubber pollution solution, which is House Bill 1652 and Senate Bill 5519, which is reducing environmental impacts associated with the operation of certain ocean-going vessels. The federal requirements for scrubber discharges do not meet Washington State's surface water quality standards. This state legislation would enact a simple solution to scrubber pollution by requiring ships to use low sulfur fuels. This would include alternative fuels such as methanol, ammonia, and LNG. The use of scrubbers is optional. Ships with scrubbers can switch to low sulfur fuels without needing new or modified engines. Any cost savings for vessel owners and operators for the lower cost of heavy fuel oil as compared to low sulfur fuel are far outweighed by the costs associated with scrubber impacts. California has required ships to use low sulfur fuels for over a decade. Other jurisdictions have taken actions to require low sulfur fuels or limit scrubber use and discharges from all vessels, including Connecticut, and Sweden, Denmark, China, and France. What you can do, I don't need to tell you that science supports the need to reduce the toxic contaminants that are impacting the critically endangered southern resident killer whales, and given the fragile nature of the population, a precautionary approach is justified. There's no specific action you can take right now in the legislation, but just please stay informed and support legislation to prohibit scrubber discharge impacts throughout the region and globally through the International Maritime Organization. And thanks to all of our members and funders who are listed here, who support Friends of the San Juan Salish Sea protection work. And as I said, I'm subbing for Level. So if there are questions, I can relay them to Level, or you can contact her directly when she's back in the office on February 27th. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jess. Just want to open it. I did link that House bill and Senate bill into the chat, and we'll circulate it for folks' reference as well. But maybe just a few minutes, see if there's any questions that we would want to raise at this point, and recognizing, Jess, you might not be able to answer, but just curious if anyone has any questions or reactions.
Thanks, Jess. Appreciate you and Level bringing that to our attention, as I was not aware of the discharge, but I have been thinking about some of the co-benefits of slowing ships down, both in terms of air pollution and noise, which sometimes seems to be the strength of the mitigation strategies that are happening down near the port of Los Angeles. And I remember from the diesel spill on the west side that there was some air monitoring in the Harrow Strait area, but just wondering if you or the friends could think about what's the current status of monitoring air quality from the perspective, particularly of Southern residents. That'd be another interesting thing to know about, like to what extent are we able to monitor the effects of this types of legislation were it to be implemented, and yeah, so just I guess it's a curiosity of mine. To what extent are we monitoring air pollution from the perspective of Southern residents?
It's a great question.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So I can, connect with Level and you, Jess, and see maybe in the meeting summary we can get some thoughts down from Level in response to that prompt. Any other questions before we take a really brief break, just to, bio break, get some water, and then we'll return and have a discussion with Jeff Rice. Right. Not seeing any hands raised or people going off mute. So I just want to say thanks, Jess, for that presentation and filling in for Level. And we'll take the next 5 minutes. So we'll return at 2:20 and we'll pick it back up with this discussion with Jeff. All right. Transitioning back. Hopefully everyone had appreciated the little break. Maybe I can get as folks are returning, a little thumbs up or reaction, just so I know you're back with us. Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. Great. Alrighty. Okay, so before I hand it off to you, Jeff, I just want to all the thumbs up. Just set the stage. So we're excited to have you kind of provide like an update around the Encyclopedia of Puget Sound species profiles that work group members have been contributing to. There's some updates there, and I think a lot of energy around making a really robust catalog of marine mammals in the Salish Sea Puget Sound region on the website. So with that, I'll hand it off to you and we'll talk about potentially future opportunities as well.
Thank you. And yeah, hello, everybody. And I just wanted to say we've got some new profiles that I can talk to you about today. And we've made a lot of progress. And I think I recognize a lot of people on the in the the viewers. But I thought I would just do a couple of things. I would tell you what we've been doing with the profiles, and then look for opportunities for new profiles, what might be good to do next. And then I can show you a sneak preview of the Encyclopedia of Puget Sound, the new design that we have, and which is going to be coming out within the next month, I think. But for some of this, I should probably share my screen. So I will see if I can do that. Share. I guess I just go share. That's all. All right. And so I hope that you're seeing my screen.
We are.
All right. So the first thing I'll mention is if you haven't seen it, there is a list of the activities that Scott put together on the Google Drive. And this shows a lot of the species that we're trying to get and some of them that we have. And we've made progress. We've got more than half of these so far. And I will show you like a couple of the new ones that have come in. Joe Gatos gave us this really nice profile of marine foraging river otters. This is the old encyclopedia, which actually has the most current information on it, but this is actually what you can see right now. And we don't always think of river otters as marine mammals, and I guess they're not technically, but they spend a lot of time in marine areas. And so Joe did this account that we put up, and it's peer reviewed, and we hope that these types of overviews are going to be helpful for, you know, scientists that may not be river otter experts, for example, or decision makers, or people that are not necessarily experts in this particular subject, but want a deep dive or a deep enough dive to where they can get the information they need. So we have river otters, which just came in, and then of course this really nice minke whale profile overview by Francis Robertson, who I think is on the call right now. So thank you very much for that. And we also have one that just came in from Tom Jefferson on common dolphins in the Salish Sea. And these, are species that maybe, there's a lot of information about common dolphins out there for sure, but there isn't as much information about common dolphins in the Salish Sea, for reference. And so I think it's helpful just to be able to provide these. And I think once we have a full list of all of the marine mammals, it's going to be a really nice go-to place that can work in conjunction with what PSEMP's doing, because I know you guys are doing, you have some ideas for your own site, and all of this can be helpful and interoperable. And so let's see, given all of that, one question I did have before I go into the tour of the encyclopedia is we want to get a definitive list of the marine mammals of the Salish Sea. I mean, we sort of know what it is, right? But I'm just wondering if anybody here knows if there's a peer-reviewed official list of the marine mammals of the Salish Sea. I'll put that as a question out to people. Maybe Scott, maybe you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Joe's still on the call. Doesn't look like he is, but oh yeah, maybe he is.
Yeah, still on this call, Scott.
Yeah,
there's Joe.
I'll put it in chat, but Scott Pearson and I did one in 2011 that doesn't have animals in it, like the beluga and some other marine mammals that have showed up since then. So I think, I do keep a list of that. I'm happy to send that to you, but I'll put a link in the chat right now.
But so Joe, I thought that was the
Salish Sea.
Yes, you're exactly right. It is. It's not Puget Sound. It is Salish Sea specific. You're right.
But But it was marine mammals and not Salish Sea reliant mammals, because we have the
It
Salish
is
Sea.
Salish Sea reliant mammals, so it has things like river otters in there. You know, they're
Yeah.
not true marine mammals. So it has the marine mammals, but it has the ones that are not true marine mammals as well.
Okay, so we do have that list up on the
Okay.
site.
Yeah, I thought you
we've been,
did.
yeah, we've been using it. But I was just thinking like, it would be interesting to take that list and then maybe separate it out and just say marine mammals of the Salish Sea specifically. And so we were going to just use that list and transfer it over, but
Sure, and that'd be the time to add in ring seal and beluga and things like that.
right, yeah, and we have accounts of those, actually short ones, on the encyclopedia. So that's, I think, going to be something that is going to play an important part on the encyclopedia in the future. And I'll just kind of walk you through the new site. This is what it will look like right here. These are not necessarily the most current articles. This is what we have designed, though, and it's functional. So we still have to make everything up to date on it, but you can see kind of the look of it. And here's like, oh, let's see if I can show you. Like, so here's the old encyclopedia, which again is functional, but we hope that this one will be a little bit easier to use and a little bit more modern. And so you can see it's organized around topics. If you click on the topics, you'll be able to find an A to Z list of important topics for Puget Sound Salish Sea recovery. And you know, each letter will have different topics, and then if you click on the topic, let's say you're interested in algae, then you'll come to a page that has a short overview of algae, something that we built, you know, like a definition or something, and then a more in-depth overview. This is actually something I think from that Joe produced for us, with one of his interns. And then you'll see related articles that are connected to the overview. And this is similar to the way we have it now on the encyclopedia, but it's a little bit clearer as to how it works, I think, in this new version. And also you can see, if you click on topics, you can see all the articles that we've done since the beginning of time, all in a row. But I think for this particular subject, for this situation, what's going to be especially interesting is the species list, and the species page. And this is where we're going to organize the marine mammal page. And right now we have, since there's no definitive list of Salish Sea or Puget Sound species in general, we have to kind of divide it out and find different lists that we can then refer to. And here we actually have the CDOC Salish Sea reliant mammals list. And they're all here. And then if you go to, you know, if you click on these, you'll get, let's see, what's a good one? See what we have for killer whales. You'll get a page on killer whales and related articles. And these up here are photos that are from Flickr that automatically populate the site. So this is really helpful when we have a lot of obscure species. You know, there's a lot of killer whale species or pictures out there, but Flickr is a great source for all kinds of photos, and so that's automated. But right here we have an overview of killer whales. This is another thing that I'd be interested in updating. we do have an overview of killer whales that came to us from the original Puget Sound Science update. But it's pretty out of date, and we haven't been focusing so much on this because everybody's focusing on killer whales, and we didn't want to reproduce other work. But if there's a really good general overview that we could put on the encyclopedia to update the Puget Sound Science Review, that would be something I think we're ready to do. But anyway, as you can see, we have all kinds of species up here, probably, 10,000 represented ultimately. And we are going to make another attempt to work with the Encyclopedia of Life to get their data and put it up here for a lot of the species that we don't have profiles for. A lot of that is already on the Encyclopedia Puget Sound, but we want to update that and put it up. So I think anyway, on this species page is where we're going to put a marine mammals section, and then on that section you'll be able to find all of the overviews that you guys have created, and as well as short summaries and photos and all of that kind of stuff. And we hope that it's going to be a really great go-to place. And we want to collaborate with all of you, as well as any organization that's interested in Puget Sound, that's doing this kind of work. We just want to have everything in one place so that it's easier to find and understand. And so that's kind of where we're heading. I can show you, I think I'm almost running out of time, but
Yeah.
there's just some nice design things that I can share. The magazine is going to look more like a magazine. Here's something that we just did. Eric Wagner did on the buffer zones for orcas, and related to sound and boat noise. But it just kind of looks like a real magazine, and we're proud of the design, and I think it's going to be, as I said, easier to use as well. So if anybody had anything to add, questions, I would just say I would leave you with my great interest in continuing the species profiles. Anything that we can get. We're still looking for some of this stuff. Humpback whale, gray whale, sperm whale, and I think Scott and I will get together for a meeting and we can talk about that. But if anybody wants to add anything, please let me know.
Thanks so much, Jeff. And I'll just say this isn't the first time Jeff has come and provided an update and a conversation with our work group. And there's also funding related to the development of these articles that we've highlighted. In the interest of time, maybe Scott, I'll invite you to kind of round out this agenda item, and then we'll go to Hendrik.
I can segue to Hendrik, I think.
Yeah,
here.
perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. We appreciate your support over the years as a place where we can provide some summaries of what we see. I think that's just the beginning of what's possible, and what Joe and Hendrik and Giles are working on is a piece of it. I think, we have a quasi-definitive list that we're sort of working our way down in that spreadsheet. And, some of those are commonly cited and commonly occur within the Puget Sound, depending on how you define it geographically, and some are super rare. So we've definitely focusing on the common ones but ideally an encyclopedia would have the rare stories of that, like the beluga, for example. So I think we're getting there over time. And the cool thing is that AI and technology are helping us tell more granular stories about matriline's within ecotypes or pods within ecotypes, and then individuals within harbor porpoises. So I think there's a lot of room for integration between encyclopedia style, magazine style, and other data products that tell the story of the monitoring data. And it's just going to get better and more automated, I think, in the next 5 years. So thank you. And a little nugget I learned from attending some of those PSEMP coffees is that state funding is in question for things that we were hoping for, like it may take longer for us to get a marine mammal work group website. And so for now, the encyclopedia is an existing source of support for us to use to tell some of those stories. So we'll continue working with you, Jeff, but hopefully interlink down to individual southern resident killer whales through projects like this health database. So thanks for the opportunity, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, thanks for transitioning us, Scott. I'll hand it off to you, Hendrik, and you should be able to share your screen, but feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Nicole. And just so you know, Joe and I are my co-conspirators, Joe and Brad are on here, so they'll chime in, and we don't have anything sort of formally prepared. We're building off of, I can't remember how long ago it was. Is that a year ago, maybe longer, that we were here and we introduced, you know, our initiative of what we're working towards, and basically in a nutshell, together we're working towards developing remotely collected, so non-invasive and non-interfering health metrics that reflect individual southern resident killer whale health, with the idea then, if we understand health of the individual animals, we can understand if health or lack thereof or health concerns are a hurdle, an obstacle in population recovery. And then from there, you know, are there opportunities for us to intervene and do something about that and improve some of those health outcomes. That's the purpose of our work. A year or so ago, you know, we shared some slides, and we're happy to share this after the fact too with those of you who are not familiar on a little bit more background and detail and how we go about that. But what we thought for this go around is that maybe we give some updates on things that have, you know, milestones that we've cleared, things we've accomplished, and just give the team, rather than sort of introduce you again to the concept, but really update on some of the things we've been accomplishing over the past year or so. Is that all right? Okay. And so I don't think there's necessarily an order to our madness, right, Joe? We were going back and forth about what the things were, because sometimes we forget. And do you want to take the first one, Joe, on respiratory rates, land-based respiratory rates? You want to speak to that one?
Yeah, thank you, Hendrik, and thanks all for being interested in this again. So, you know, one of the things that came out last year, we did a paper with Rob Williams and his group looking at back from some land collected data on respiratory rates in northern and southern resident killer whales. It's as a veterinarian, it's kind of a shame when you think like getting simple things like temperature, pulse, respiration are difficult for us. And I put I'll link to the PDF in the chat there, but you'll see, you know, we had to look at different states. Is the animals feeding? Are they resting? Are they traveling? And we were fortunate, or maybe not fortunate, depending on how you look at it, to get some data on some animals that were in poor body condition. And so the evidence suggests that we see changes not just in respiratory rate, but also in swim speed for those animals. So that paper's in there. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about that. Those are the sorts of metrics that we'll be able to, get in, just like when you go to your physician and she listens to how often you're breathing every minute to say, well, it sounds like you might have pneumonia or some other COPD or tuberculosis, or a whole suite of things. But we're just getting these metrics down, and we're trying to publish them as we get them out.
And there's opportunities to refine this, right? This is the big strength, I think, here of that initiative, is that it was using a land-based, long-standing data set, you know, that and is sort of repurposing for a different use. And so now, based on the findings there, and we can now sort of dial this in a little bit more and probably look at respiratory rates within a pod and who's the outlier within the pod, right? Because everybody's swimming against the same tide, against the same current, you know, and sort of who stands out on either end of that bell curve, and can that be a prognostic indicator? Another area we've been working on, and we'll be jumping around a little bit from the data streams to conservation technology, but is leaning into our conservation technology team and drone-based work. One of the so when we go into the field, we outfit our drones with the payload difference, sort of depending on has been depending from year to year. Varying from year to year, so I should say. One of the tools we had on the drone this past season, actually we did a quick trial 2 years ago, but this year made it a priority for the field workers, actually looking at infrared imaging. And so some of those cameras, they're 4K, they're high resolution. They actually the camera we had on the drones, it gets the regular high resolution video imagery, but then also that same image in infrared. And it actually allows for after post review and post analysis. And so what we were interested in is, well, what can we see on infrared? Is there any blunt trauma? Some of these skin changes, are they perfused? Are they warm and therefore active? Are they old and inactive? But specifically, one of the areas we were interested in was to see if we can get a intranasal, so down the blowhole temperature of the whales. Back to Joe's point at the beginning, TPR, temperature, pulse, and respiration is sort of like the beginning of any human or animal exam. So it's the very basic. And so, could we do this from a drone? Turns out, yes, we can get measurements down the blowhole. The blowhole does light up red compared to the rest of the whale, who sort of blends in with the seawater temperature. So what we're in the process of doing now is somebody actually has taken the peak temperature of each whale at each encounter, and we're at the point where we're analyzing the variability within whales, between whales, to see what makes biological sense and what more we need to do with this tool and technique to have it be useful. One of the things we've come to realize is that there's a good chance that we're not actually we set out hoping that thinking this might be a proxy for a rectal temperature, a core body temperature, and that may not necessarily be the case actually, but it could be that instead we are actually measuring that we're getting some score of the mixing, the aerodynamics that is happening, in that inhale exhale cycle, which itself too is actually very interesting, because now you're almost looking at a pulmonary function test. Is the exhale or the inhale as strong as it should be, as it has been, as it is in the pod mates? So work is very much under development, and no promises yet, but at least from what we've seen so far, this is a promising technique. And I don't know, Joe, actually, this might be a good segue to talk about J31.
Yeah, I think go ahead and talk about that now, because I think it's a good example of how we use that tool, even though we didn't have an actual number, but it benefited us.
Yeah, so I think it was, what are we, 25 now? So I think it was when we first trialed the tool. Oh gosh, is it 23 or 24? It doesn't matter. At some point in time, we were on Brad's boat. We were doing whatever work we were doing, and actually came behind a group of whales and smelled some very pungent odor. I think many of us have smelled bad whale breath. It happens. It's not a problem. This was a different sort of order of magnitude, a different category. It really smelled like necrosis, like something that is decaying in one of these animals. It took us there's a group of animals. It took us a while to sort of try to triangulate out who it came from. Eventually, we convinced ourselves that it came from a female J31, who coincidentally is the mom, if I'm not mistaken, Brad, Joe, correct me, of J56, who's a calf it's a 5 or so year old calf, who is actually, her whole life has been reported to be thin, sort of underconditioned. And so we suspected it was J31. At that point, we deployed our drone and did a flight, and collected infrared imagery from the blowhole, and secondly also collected some blow plates. So our drone has a harness mounted on top where we can actually get some of that vapor plume of the exhale. This is in part seawater, in part lung fluid. And so what we found from that work is that the blowhole temperature of J31 was actually several degrees lower than the blowhole temperature, the peak blowhole temperature of her pod mates that were swimming alongside her. And also from that plate, when looking at the cells we had collected on the plate, we actually collected some decaying, broken down mammalian red blood cells, which don't belong in there. It shouldn't be in there. So we actually, for the first time, were able to, in real time, say, yes, this is the whale, and something is abnormal or unusual is going on in presumably the upper respiratory tract of that animal. We immediately notified all the partners on the water, NOAA's, whoever the relevant distribution list was. We didn't get an answer of exactly what was going on. We can hypothesize, but obviously we didn't really get to look down there and do an exam as we would love to do. But importantly, actually the following day we saw J31 again. We had the same findings, and then a couple of days later, and somebody can correct me on the timeline, we actually encountered J31 again. The smell had disappeared, and the breath sample was clean. So it is, even though it was a good outcome, there's nothing we did. J31, it did not resolve because of anything we did, but the fact that we were actually able to pinpoint the animal, sort of narrow down the cause of what may be going on. And then also detect that the issue had resolved, prepare the teams that may need to know about this was a milestone in our work.
Yeah, and one of those things too, a couple of years ago, when Hendrik and maybe Brad presented to you, one of the things we've been concerned about is going in and taking a breath sample. Are we bothering the whales? There have been papers published with some species like beluga where it's very problematic. They don't like the sound of the drone or whatever it might be. They have evasive behaviors. And so we just had a paper that Catherine Lowe published last year with the team. I just put it into the chat there, but looking, and we think we're actually not bothering these animals at all. We had a lot of flights over bigs or transient killer whales as well as southern residents, and we did see them roll a couple times, but really no evasive behaviors or anything like that. So even the roll and the look was maybe only 4% of the segments when we were flying over them, and we actually don't know if they were looking down or they were looking up, but we think they're probably looking up at the drone. So that gives us a little bit better feeling that if we've got an animal of concern, we can get in there and get a sample without being part of the problem.
Yeah. And we learned a lot about, we drew some conclusions about angle of approach, come from behind, not from the side, not head on, some of these common sense things. But yeah, knowing that there might be an awareness, but importantly, nothing like beluga, where even at 70 feet or diving and changing of directions, like true changes in behavior that are triggered by the presence of the drone overhead. Next, we spent this past year, so there are two biological samples we can get from the whales at this point in time. One is the breath, like I talked earlier, the exhaled vapor droplets, and then feces. So that's not very much. Those samples are invaluable, and so we try to get the most information out of it possible. Our challenge with the breath plume has been the amount of the volume of droplets we get. It's really sort of disappointing. You see a big plume, you see the drone go through, you see the turbulence, you know that you hit the plume, and then you come back and there's like just a couple of tiny little droplets. So the sample yield has been a challenge for us over the years, for the initiative over the years. One of the things we did is we did a trial and optimized a few things. We actually got two experienced, Brad brought in some other people so somebody else could boat drive, so he can have his 30 years of that perception on the water help us make sure that we're actually in the plume. The other one is we actually increased we went from 2, I think it was, petri dishes to 4. We modified the harness on top of the drone, where we now have multiple plates on top of the drone, so it's just increased the sample collection surface. And then we did a trial to optimize evaluating different extraction protocols for DNA and RNA that we can get from these low volume, very diluted droplets, and then also evaluated a protocol to do it's almost like this photocopying, this random amplification of any and all DNA, RNA, any and all nucleotides that are in those samples. And that is, we're excited to report that that's been a success. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but of the majority of the breath plates we brought back to the boat, and some of those we know don't have much material at all on them, but the majority of the plates we collected and brought back to the boat, we were able to, when we processed them with this optimized protocol, we were actually able to to detect killer whale DNA into those droplets. And so that is our marker, our evidence that we're actually collecting lung fluid from the animals and not just seawater, not just air. So we haven't, now that we've cleared that hurdle, we have enough DNA left to first step will always prove, yes, this actually contains lung fluid or host material. And then now we have the luxury problem, really, of having to decide of how we're going to use this DNA, which assays to run first, which pathogens to test for, which is, it's an open question considering how little is known about health and disease or pathogens in these animals. We will take a shotgun approach this first year. We will just sequence everything, and then that'll guide us toward, which includes things like lungworms, fungi, protozoa, bacteria, and then we'll from there we'll be able to refine sort of which groups of microbes we will want to be testing for going forward. Joe, do you want to speak to the fecal sample a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, why don't you talk about that, the optimization of the laboratory stuff for the fecal sample? I'd like to do that one.
Yeah, so it's similar to the blow sample. Fecal samples sometimes there's more than you're willing to have to parse out at the end of the day because there's just a lot. But most other times there's not a lot of material there. And so again, one of the things we did in the lab over the course of the year and then took into the field in June and September is developing a protocol that allows us to get again genetic material, so DNA, RNA, and hormone data out of really minimal sample volumes. And so at this point in time, with the protocol we were able to develop, we can, if we have 1 ml of feces, which is really not much, it's a tablespoon, if that, half of that, I think, and we can actually at this point in time extract hormones. So the team analyzes for 4 hormones: progesterone, TSH, so thyroid hormone. Help me out, Joe. One of the estrogens, and I forgot what the 4th one is now. Oh, yeah. Cortisol. And then, but after that, we still have enough genetic material left to do diet metabarcoding, which is not done by our group. This is a partner of Noah and Brad who will do that analysis. But we do metabarcoding for parasites, bacteria, fungi, and protozoa again. And importantly, genotyping. So for each of the southern resident killer whales with a known genome, at least, we have a genotyping tool, both in-house here, and Brad and his team have it up and running again too. So we can now genetically confirm or trace back which whale the fecal sample came from, and then all our test result data, whether it's parasites or whichever data points, we can correlate that back to confirm which whale those data points came from.
Yeah, I think that's about it, Hendrik. I think we've covered everything. So happy to take any questions that anybody has about what's going on or where we are. I think we about run out of time, haven't we, Nicole?
Perfect timing. We had a little bit of buffer, so we have about 5 minutes for questions, answers, and then I'll just take like 20 seconds to wrap up our meeting at the last minute. So open to questions.
Question in the chat about fecal sample sharing. I don't think that one's for me. I think that's for Joe or Brad.
Yeah, that's a good question, Cindy. So we are working very closely with wild orca right now on fecal samples. The processing that's being done by the samples that Deb Giles collects at Wild Orca are being tested at San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. And so even with shipping, we're able to kind of split up and archive samples down there. And I think it's going to lead to some interesting things because we'd like to look more at the relationship between some of these hormones and some of the other parameters we're looking at. We think we might be able to either detect animals that are more likely to get disease, or maybe detect some animals that we think we can anticipate some changes in some hormone levels. So yeah, we're working pretty closely with Giles on that.
Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you guys for the update. It's exciting. And I was curious to know if either of you could update us on what I know was a challenge historically, which is sort of creating some sort of database or shared database where all of these potential metrics and existing metrics and other metrics from acoustics or land-based community science observations could be pooled together over time. And so just wondering, do you have any updates on that front? Or is there anything we can do to help promote that sort of data
Scott,
sharing?
and you've been a great champion, so thank you for bringing that up. We had a meeting maybe about a year and a half ago to talk about some of the health stuff. And one of the biggest things that came up is we got to get this database working. You know, we have one that's access-based, it's on the cloud, but it's not really available. It's not password protected. People, you know, managers like Tara or Brad or somebody from DFO can't get in there and see it. It's just not the way that we're doing science these days. And so Michael Weiss at Center for Whale Research said, you know, I would be willing to take a next step on this. And so we, CDOC with Michael, applied for some funding through National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and got a small amount of money. We had a meeting last fall about that. And turns out, as Cindy brought up earlier, you know, the database that Giles and Michael Hayes have put together, Wild Orca, has actually been a phenomenal starting base for that. So we're contracting with Michael Hayes to continue to develop that. So it'll be seamless with the information, all the behavioral stuff and all the, you know, family lineage things at Center for Whale Research, but people will be able to put in the different data. We can't wait to unload our stuff onto that, and we're anticipating that we'll be at a point this spring to do that. We even have had some talks about using whale watch operators and other people for syndromic surveillance, where they can say, that animal is swimming funny, or that animal is lagging behind. Boom, it goes in there, and there'll be things that pop up quickly for people to look at. So I feel like after so many years of fits and spurts and failures, really epic failures, I think we're actually in a place where we think we can get that going.
Excellent. Well, we'll look forward to more updates from you and Giles on that. And
Yeah.
I see integrations with Akarsha and the ability to share location data and integrations with FinWave, plus Happy Whale, plus Gray Whale AI that's coming. And if we can leverage what you're building for Southern residents for other species, I think that would be the most powerful solution for the ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think we will be able to, Scott. So we'll keep you posted. And I'll just steal one last second. We do have a non-marine mammal tidal beavers that help with salmon in the tidal areas, like in the Snohomish Delta. And we just have a Sailor Sea Wild coming up. So I'm going to put a link to that YouTube in the Slack. So,
so cool.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe and Hendrik. Oh, Tara, how about one last question?
Real quick, right before we leave, you know, there's been a lot of talk about a data consortium. And so just is the database that's kind of being worked on something that could potentially lead into that or be foundational in terms of the broad, I mean, I think you mentioned you were going to broaden the types of data that you could collect, but I know there's been a lot of chatter about this concept of a data consortium, which is more than just a database, I realize. But
yeah, and I think the database is the tool for the consortium. And what we'd ultimately like to get to a sort of consortium, maybe modeled after the North Atlantic right whale.
This is Joe Gatos from the CDOC Society.
Oh God, someone's playing that thing already.
Someone's
That's
playing the video.
Like the worst thing to hear yourself when you're
eager
talking.
audience, Joe. You have an eager audience.
But yeah, I do think that that consortium will come up and the database may drive that in a way, but it'll really be a tool for the consortium. And then we can remove it from Center for Whale Research. It actually is a standalone entity. People want to use the data, then they can go to that entity who oversees it for getting it out there for different uses and things like that.
Thank you.
Great. Well, it is 3:01. Everyone, thanks for joining us for the last 2 hours and hearing a lot of different talks. I'll just close out by saying we will be reaching out soon with our meeting summary, the recording of this meeting, and materials. Well, also, just as a flag awareness, we're going to be reaching out to members that have attended meetings over the last 1 or 2 years, just to hear from you, see what you're getting out of these meetings, what you'd like to see more out of these meetings, and so that we can adapt to the needs that are coming up for you all. And we'll soon be reaching out about the spring meeting for the Marine Mammals Work Group, which will likely be in person. So we're going to be sending out a poll about that. So thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you to our presenters and for everyone participating. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.